Katamari is a Japanese video game series created by Kita Takahashi and was developed by Namco, currently known as Bandai Namco. The game puts the player in the shoes of the prince, whose goal is to help his father, the king of all the cosmos, recreate the stars and planets by using a ball called the Katamari to roll up objects. And today, we're going to be remaking this game for the Game Maker's Toolkit Annual Game Jam. The theme is
Built to Scale,
and figured this would be the perfect time to try and make a Katamari-inspired game, since the game is about starting small and becoming really big. And look at this, while researching, I stumbled upon this Google Easter egg. If you search Katamari and click on this ball, you can play Katamari with the Google page and pick up all the text, links, pictures, and even the search bar, which I found just so awesome. So the first order of business is to start a new project, get a blank world, and make ball go roll. I found a great tutorial by Cat-Like Coding, and they had the whole project on GitHub, so I just copied and pasted all the code I needed. I was very studious, read through all of the text, and translated the knowledge I had gained into my very own version of a rolling ball. Seriously though, check out their stuff. They teach you about many different things and is an overall fantastic resource for game developers. I put a link in the description to the page. I then made the ability for objects to stick to the ball, so once the player collides with an object, the object automatically has its parent set as the player. Therefore, it will inherit all current and future movement and rotations of the player. Each object will have its own weight, and the goal of the game will be to satisfy the weight requirement of this huge scale that's in the middle of the map by rolling everything up into a ball. Each object will have its own scale number that is checked when the player collides with it. If the player scale number is lower than the object scale number, you will not pick it up, and you have to come back when you're bigger. The player's scale number increases after a certain weight threshold is met, which allows the ability to pick up larger objects. This is important because it prevents the player from picking up objects that are bigger than the total size of their current ball, and guarantees a progression of snowballing smaller objects into larger objects over time. I also made it so the camera zooms out when the player's scale number increases, so you don't have a huge ball taking up half the screen. So Katamari has a mechanic that when an object is picked up, it impacts how the ball is rolling, which makes sense. Now that this big new object has been attached, of course it will affect how the ball rolls. But what's really interesting and what the game doesn't tell you is after time, that same object begins affecting the rolling movement less and less until the ball rolls normally again. This is a delicate balance between what the player expects to happen and how the player experiences what happens over time. You wouldn't want that object to affect the rolling the entire time because you'd never be able to roll around so freely, and it would hurt the fun, laid-back rolling around gameplay that the game is famous for. So to mimic this, I have a physical collider that is the size of each object, and once the player picks up an object, over time the collider becomes smaller and smaller until its size is 0. This way, when first picking it up, the momentum is shifted, but the rolling movement will go back to normal over time. So in Katamari, there's a lot of noises and animations that play when humans and other things get rolled up. And in order to have a similar effect while also saving time because we're on a time crunch, I added a dialogue text system where a text box appears where they can let their feelings out after they've been rolled up, or maybe even praising God for finally answering their call. Now, in order to not have a repeat of last jam, where I submitted the wrong project with 5 seconds left, submit project, 6 seconds, 6 seconds, oh, just upload, no. Before I polished or added any content, I decided to just add the ending and get it over with. So in order to finish the game, you need to hit a certain weight that increases with each object you pick up. Then you have to step on this huge scale in the middle of the map and offer a sacrifice to the Korugasu god. So a fun fact, Katamari Damacy means a chunk of soul. So in order to have a similar name that isn't nearly as creative, but does by coincidence have the same amount of syllables, I named it Korugasu, which means to roll. I was super relieved after completing this step because I had a full game loop that can be played from start to finish with half the jam time still left. Next was creating the level. The inspiration for the map creation came from the final level in Katamari's original PS2 game, Katamari Damacy, which has you rolling over cities and towns and even has you picking up the clouds in the sky, which I thought was a really cool idea. I got all of my assets from various free sources, mostly from Kenny. The only thing that I modeled myself was the player ball, the clouds in the sky, and the Korugasu god, which I made to be super cursed looking.
So it's peering into the depths of your soul
as you offer a sacrifice to it. The inspiration came from a show I've been watching called Smiling Friends. Their headquarters is a huge smiling yellow head that looks so uncanny I thought it was the perfect design to go off of. So in terms of the design of the level, I made it so the player immediately starts on the scale so they see their goal. Then, the beginning area has all little crops and small objects to get the ball rolling. From there, you work your way outwards to pick up trees, houses, buildings, and even cruise liners. The idea is that as the player works outward, the objects that can be picked up get bigger and bigger, which neatly ties the player's progression and the level design together in a cohesive experience. So with a healthy 6 hours remaining, I submitted the game to the Jam, and my goal was to finish in the top 50% overall. Well, the final tally was 7,604 entries, and I ended up placing number 3,987. And with some math, that equates to the top 54th percentile, which I'd say is close enough to call it a win. After the Jam, I added a screen space outline shader from my last game. I also added some post-processing effects. So here's a list of things I would add if I continued with development, so let me know if this seems like a fun little game you'd like me to keep working on. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe, because this is only the beginning of my YouTube journey and I would love to share it with more people. The game is up on my itch page if you'd like to check it out. And yeah, that's about it. Later.